Here's the first part in a simple, engaging third-person narrative of approximately 800 words. The morning sun cast long shadows across Birmingham's old courthouse, its weathered stone steps echoing with the quiet footsteps of people seeking justice. William Hartley sat behind his massive oak desk, his reading glasses perched carefully on the bridge of his nose. At 52, he had seen countless cases, heard thousands of stories, but today felt different. Emma Coleman walked into the courtroom, her presence both gentle and strong. She was a woman in her late 30s, with deep brown eyes that seemed to carry the weight of countless untold stories. Her blue blazer was pressed perfectly, her hair neatly pulled back, revealing a face that spoke of determination and quiet resilience. The courtroom was nearly empty. A few chairs squeaked as people shifted uncomfortably, waiting for their turn. The air conditioning hummed softly, creating a backdrop of white noise that did little to mask the tension. Emma's traffic violation seemed simple on the surface. A missed signal, a momentary lapse. But William noticed something different about her. While most people would nervously fumble with their documents, Emma sat quietly, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her posture straight but not rigid. "Miss Coleman," William's voice cut through the silence. "You are charged with a traffic violation on Oak Street. How do you plead?" Her response was calm, measured. "I understand the violation, Your Honor. I was helping a community member whose car had broken down. I momentarily lost focus while ensuring their safety." William raised an eyebrow. It was an explanation, not an excuse. He had heard countless stories over his years on the bench, some true, many fabricated. But something in Emma's voice rang with authenticity. As he reviewed the documents, Emma's eyes never wavered. She wasn't begging. She wasn't trying to manipulate. She was simply presenting her truth. The courthouse walls seemed to hold generations of stories. Old photographs of previous judges lined the walls, their stern faces watching silently. William felt their collective gaze as he considered Emma's case. Most people would see just another routine traffic violation. But William had learned long ago that every piece of paper represented a human story. And Emma's story seemed different. Her badge caught his eye, a small pin on her blazer depicting a community center's logo. He recognized it from local news reports about grassroots initiatives helping underprivileged neighborhoods. "Miss Coleman," William adjusted his glasses, "do you understand the implications of this violation?" "Yes, Your Honor," she responded, respectfully. "I accept the consequences of my actions, regardless of my intentions." The room fell silent. Her dignity was remarkable. No drama, no emotional outburst, just a quiet acceptance of responsibility. William felt something shift inside him. In his years of judging, he had grown accustomed to seeing people try to escape responsibility. But here was someone who faced consequences with grace. The fine was significant, enough to hurt someone's monthly budget. As he wrote it out, William watched Emma. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask for mercy. She simply listened. Outside the courtroom, the city of Birmingham continued its daily rhythm. Cars moved, people walked, life continued. But inside this small room, a moment of human connection was unfolding, though neither Emma nor William fully realized it yet. When William announced the fine, his voice was professional, detached. The sound of his gavel seemed to echo the finality of the moment. Yet something about Emma suggested this was not an ending, but perhaps a beginning. As she gathered her documents, Emma offered a slight, respectful nod. Not a smile of agreement, not a look of defeat, but an acknowledgement of the moment's complexity. Little did William know that the woman standing before him was far more than a simple traffic violation case. Emma Coleman was a beacon of hope in her community, a fighter for justice, someone who transformed challenges into opportunities for change. Sometimes life's most profound moments arrive disguised as ordinary encounters, and sometimes a single interaction can plant seeds of understanding that would soon grow into something extraordinary. The courthouse continued its steady pulse, unaware that a remarkable journey was just beginning. Here's part 2, in a simple, engaging third-person narrative of approximately 800 words. Emma Coleman walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the fine pressing against her spirit. But defeat was not a language she understood. Her footsteps were steady, her resolve unbroken. The Birmingham streets buzzed with midday activity. Small shops lined the sidewalks, and people moved about their daily routines. For Emma, this was more than just a street. It was her community, her battleground for justice. In her small apartment that evening, she spread her work across the kitchen table. Stacks of papers, community reports, and research documents created a mosaic of her life's mission. The fine was just another challenge, not a roadblock. Emma's journey hadn't been easy. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, she had learned early that change doesn't happen by waiting. It happens by acting. Her bulletin board told a story: photographs of community meetings, children's education programs, and local support initiatives covered nearly every inch. Each image represented a small victory, a moment of hope in a world that often seemed indifferent. She picked up her laptop and began reviewing her presentation for an upcoming conference. The topic: systemic barriers in urban communities. The traffic fine seemed almost ironic now, another example of the very systems she fought against. Her phone buzzed. It was Michael, her longtime colleague from the community center. "How did the court go?" he asked. "Just another day," Emma responded. "The fine doesn't matter. What matters is the work we're doing." Michael understood. They had been fighting, together for years, transforming small challenges into opportunities for broader change. Their work wasn't about individual victories but collective progress. Emma's research was meticulous. Numbers, personal stories, statistical analyses. She wove them together like a complex tapestry. Each data point represented a real person, a real struggle, a real hope. She thought about the community center where she worked. It wasn't just a building. It was a lifeline for families struggling to find their footing. Education programs, job, training, legal support. They offered more than services. They offered dignity. The evening light filtered through her small apartment window. Outside, children played in the street, their laughter a soundtrack to her work. Emma smiled. This was why she continued. This was why a simple traffic fine meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. Her computer screen filled with graphs and charts. But behind each number was a human story. A mother trying to get her children a better education. A young man seeking job training. A family fighting to stay together. Emma's personal history drove her forward. She remembered her own mother, who worked 3 jobs to ensure her daughter could dream. Those memories were not just personal. They were political. They were a call to action. The community center where she worked was more than a job. It was a mission. Every program, every initiative was carefully designed to break cycles of poverty and discrimination. Small steps, consistent efforts. As night fell, Emma continued working. The traffic fine sat on her desk, a reminder not of punishment, but of resilience. She would fight this, just as she fought every other challenge. Her phone displayed a news alert about upcoming city council meetings. Emma made mental notes. Another opportunity to speak. Another chance to push for change. The clock approached midnight. Most people would be sleeping. But for Emma, the work never truly stopped. Her community needed advocates who worked beyond traditional hours, who saw challenges as opportunities. She thought about Judge William Hartley. The fine was just a moment. But moments can be transformed. Understanding can be cultivated. Change begins with conversations, with people willing to listen. Emma's workspace reflected her philosophy. Books about social justice, community development, and legal reforms surrounded her. Each volume represented a piece of a larger puzzle, the puzzle of creating a more equitable society. As she prepared for bed, Emma didn't see the fine as a setback. It was another story, another opportunity to demonstrate resilience. Another chance to show that systemic challenges could be met with intelligent, compassionate resistance. The city of Birmingham slept. But Emma Coleman was awake, planning, dreaming, working. Her story was just beginning. Here's part 3, in a simple, engaging third-person narrative of approximately 800 words. The conference hall buzzed with energy. Lawyers, researchers, and community activists filled the large room, their conversations creating a soft hum of intellectual excitement. William Hartley had attended dozens of these events over his years, but today felt different. He sat in the back row, almost hidden among the crowd. His coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand as the next speaker was introduced. And then he saw her, Emma Coleman. She walked to the podium with quiet confidence. Her blue blazer was the same one she had worn in his courtroom. But here she was transformed. No longer a defendant, but a powerful voice of change. Emma's presentation began softly. Her voice was clear, measured. She spoke about systemic challenges in urban communities, weaving statistics with human stories. William found himself leaning forward, completely captivated. The screen behind her filled with graphs and images. Each slide told a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. William realized he was seeing the world through a lens he had never experienced before. She talked about traffic stops in urban communities, how a simple violation could become a life-changing moment, how small legal interactions could create lasting impacts on families and communities. William remembered the fine he had issued. Suddenly it felt like more than just a legal transaction. It was a moment that represented something larger. The room was silent. Even the most experienced lawyers seemed captivated by Emma's presentation. She wasn't just presenting data. She was telling human stories. Every interaction with the legal system, Emma said, is an opportunity for understanding, not punishment. Her words hit William like a soft but powerful wave. He thought about his years on the bench. How many times had he seen cases as mere paperwork rather than human experiences? During the break, William wanted to approach her, but something held him back. Shame, curiosity, a mix of both. Colleagues around him discussed her presentation. Remarkable research, one lawyer said. She's changing how we understand community justice. William overheard conversations about Emma's work, community centers, legal support programs, education initiatives. Her life was dedicated to creating real, meaningful change. He pulled out his notebook and began writing. Not legal notes, but personal reflections. Questions about his own understanding of justice. Thoughts about the system he had been part of for decades. The conference continued, but William was changed. The woman he had found in his courtroom was now revealing a world he had never truly seen. Emma's presentation revealed layers of complexity. Traffic stops weren't just legal interactions. They were moments that could define a person's entire life trajectory. She shared stories of families torn apart by small legal encounters, of young people whose futures were changed by a single interaction with law enforcement. William felt a growing sense of understanding. During the Q&A session, Emma answered questions with grace and intelligence. Her responses were never defensive, always constructive, always focused on finding solutions. William watched her. The same woman who had stood quietly in his courtroom was now commanding a room full of legal experts. Her power wasn't in aggression, but in understanding. As the session ended, Emma received a standing ovation. Researchers, lawyers, and activists approached her, eager to discuss her work. William remained seated. He needed time to process what he had seen. The woman he had judged so quickly was now revealing depths he had never imagined. The conference hall began to empty. People collected their materials, exchanged business cards, discussed future collaborations. But William sat still. His world subtly but fundamentally changed. One presentation, 1 hour, and suddenly, everything looked different. Outside, the Birmingham sun continued its journey across the sky. Unaware that inside this conference hall, a profound moment of human understanding had just unfolded. William Hartley knew his perspective would never be the same again. Here's part 4, in a simple, engaging third-person narrative of approximately 800 words. Weeks passed after the conference, but William Hartley couldn't shake the memory of Emma Coleman's presentation. His office felt different now. The law books seemed to whisper new questions, challenging his long-held beliefs. He began, reading everything he could find about Emma's work: community reports, research papers, news articles. Each document peeled back another layer of understanding. The walls of his study became a map of discovery. Photographs, research notes, and community reports created a collage of a world he had never truly seen. His wife, Margaret, watched with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "You're different," Margaret said one evening, placing a cup of tea beside his research. "Something has changed you." William nodded. He couldn't explain the transformation happening inside him. It was more than just learning, it was understanding. He thought about his years on the bench. How many lives had he touched without really seeing them? How many stories had he reduced to simple legal transactions? Emma's research revealed patterns he had never noticed. Traffic stops weren't just violations. They were moments that could define entire family histories. A single fine could ripple through generations. His computer screen filled with stories. Families struggling to pay unexpected legal costs. Young people whose educational opportunities were derailed by minor legal interactions. The human cost of bureaucratic decisions. William began talking to younger lawyers in his network. He asked questions. He listened. Really listened. His colleagues noticed the change. The stern judge who once viewed cases as simple legal transactions was now asking deeper questions. What did justice really mean? How could the legal system truly serve communities? At night he would sit in his study, surrounded by research and photographs. The community center where Emma worked became more than just an address. It was a beacon of hope. He thought about his own childhood. Growing up in a privileged neighborhood, he had never understood the challenges faced by communities like Emma's. His world had been carefully constructed, protected. Margaret would sometimes find him lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she would ask. "Everything," William would respond, "and nothing I thought I knew before." His reflection wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. He was questioning everything he had believed about justice, about community, about his own role in the world. Emma's work showed something powerful. Change wasn't about grand gestures. It was about understanding, about seeing people as humans, not case numbers. He remembered the day he fined Emma. That moment now felt like a lifetime ago. How quickly he had judged, how little he had understood. The community center's annual report became his bedtime reading. Each page told stories of resilience, of hope, of people fighting against impossible odds. William started making changes. He began mentoring young lawyers, encouraging them to see beyond legal paperwork, to understand the human stories behind each case. His colleagues were surprised. The stern judge was becoming something else. A listener, a learner, someone willing to admit he didn't know everything. One evening, Margaret found him crying. Not from sadness, but from understanding. "I've been part of a system," he told her, without truly seeing the people in that system. The Birmingham legal community began to whisper. Something was happening to Judge William Hartley. He was asking different questions, listening in new ways. Emma Coleman had done more than give a presentation. She had opened a window into a world William had never seen, and he was grateful. His reflection wasn't about guilt. It was about growth, about understanding that true justice goes far beyond legal documents. The city continued its rhythm, but for William Hartley, everything had changed. One presentation, one woman's story, had transformed his entire understanding of the world, and this was just the beginning. Here's part 5 in a simple, engaging third-person narrative of approximately 800 words. The letter arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning. William Hartley's hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope. An invitation, Not a legal document, but a personal request from Emma Coleman. She wanted to meet, not in a courtroom, not at a conference, but in the community center where she worked. Margaret watched her husband prepare. He chose his clothes carefully, not his judicial robes, but a simple blue shirt that showed he was coming as a person, not a judge. The community center stood in a neighborhood William had driven through countless times but never truly entered. Brick buildings, children playing, elderly people sitting on porches, a world both familiar and completely unknown. Emma waited in a small meeting room. Her office was simple, walls covered with community photographs, children's artwork, and achievement certificates, no fancy decorations, just evidence of real work. "Welcome," she said simply. No anger, no judgment, just an open invitation to understand. William returned her traffic fine, a small gesture but a powerful one. "I was wrong," he said quietly. The words felt both difficult and liberating. They talked, not about legal systems, not about violations, but about community, about hope, about how small actions could create big changes. Emma shared stories, not statistics but real human experiences. Families struggling, children fighting for education, communities supporting each other against impossible odds. William listened, really listened. For the first time, he wasn't hearing cases, he was hearing human stories. The community center buzzed with activity. Children's laughter drifted through the windows. Volunteers moved quickly, helping people with job applications, legal support, education programs. "This is justice," Emma said, pointing to the activity around them. "Not punishment. Understanding." William saw something he had missed his entire career. Justice wasn't about rules. It was about people, about giving opportunities, about seeing humanity in every interaction. He learned about their programs, job training for young adults, legal support for families, educational support for children. Each program was a lifeline, not a handout. Outside, a group of children practiced a dance performance. Their energy was infectious. Their hope was real. William watched, understanding that these children represented the future Emma was fighting. For Michael, Emma's colleague, joined their conversation. He shared more stories, more insights. William realized this wasn't about one person. It was about an entire community working together. "How can I help?" William asked. The question surprised even himself. Emma smiled, not a triumphant smile, but a smile of genuine hope. "By listening," she said, "by understanding." They discussed creating a legal support program, training young lawyers to see beyond paperwork, to understand the human stories behind each case. The afternoon passed quickly. William saw the community center not as an outsider, but as a potential partner, someone who could help, not judge. As he prepared to leave, a young girl approached him. "Are you the judge?" she asked. William knelt down. "I'm learning to be something more," he responded. The moment felt profound. A simple interaction that represented something larger, a bridge between two worlds that had always existed separately. Margaret waited in the car. When William returned, she saw something different in his eyes. Not just understanding, but transformation. "What happened?" she asked. "Everything," he responded. The community center continued its work. Emma returned to her desk. William drove home, but something fundamental had changed. A traffic fine had become a moment of connection. A potential conflict had transformed into an opportunity for understanding. As the Birmingham sun set, casting long shadows across the city, William Hartley realized that true justice wasn't about punishment. It was about seeing each other's humanity. And sometimes that journey begins with a single conversation.